What do you think people are going to remember about the 2010s? By that I mean, what was the one major cultural touchstone that helped define our society's attitude for a whole decade? Well, one of the most obvious answers is the rise of self-expression. With the internet, social media, and hundreds of different hair dye colors to choose from, we have a growing need to discover who we are, then be ourselves as best we can. This isn't a phenomenon exclusive to the past 4 or 5 years. Shades of it started at the very beginning of this turbulent decade, when a bunch of grown men started to like ponies. My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic is the 4th TV tie-in to Hasbro's popular My Little Pony toy line. Notable for its high-quality comedy, animation, and morals, it blew previous iterations of the franchise out of the water. It got so much attention online that it spawned one of the biggest followings in not just animation or pop culture, but in world history. Though it's hard to say if they were the majority, there was a very large, passionate group of men in their 20s and 30s who enjoyed watching the show, known as bronies. But exactly how good was Friendship is Magic at keeping its worldwide audience coming back for more? Before I answer that, what's the history behind the scenes? My Little Pony as a toy line was created in 1981 by illustrator Bonnie Zashiel, based on her own childhood desire to own a horse she could care for and brush. The toys became a big hit, and animated adaptations were being pumped out by 1986. While they raked in even more money for the franchise, media critics were disapproving of their bland, saccharine nature. Even most kids started to see My Little Pony as pretty sappy after a while, including a 12-year-old girl by the name of Lauren Faust, an avid fan of the toys, but she saw right through the cartoons. But that didn't stop her from becoming an animator at Warner Brothers in the late 90s, before moving to Cartoon Network to work on an actually good girls cartoon, The Powerpuff Girls.
Hey, did you ever notice there are no chick narrators? Ow! Hey, who threw that?
There, she met series creator Craig McCracken, and they married by the time they finished up on Powerpuff and went to create Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends in 2004. Then as that show was wrapping up, she decided to pitch a franchise to Hasbro called Milky Way and the Galaxy Girls. But Hasbro shelved the idea and instead let her do something even more life-fulfilling, make a new My Little Pony cartoon. The franchise had even further deteriorated in quality and reputation over the prior 20 years, and needed someone who had worked extensively on some of Cartoon Network's biggest successes, so Faust got to work in redeveloping My Little Pony as something girls and their parents could be proud to watch. A set of high-stakes adventures taking influence from fantasy children's books with a colourful but strong group of female friends as the leads, determined to live their lives to the fullest. Hasbro executives were impressed, and the new show was greenlit. A few changes were made though, namely toning down the adventure elements and giving certain characters warmer, more marketable colour palettes, but they had no impact on the show's spirit, which was high. Eventually, it premiered on the newly created Hub network on October 10th, 2010. Then 4chan got a hold of it and it wasn't allowed on 4chan again. It and its new, utterly surprised fans had to make new fan sites to have somewhere to express their love for the show, which resulted in a lot of mixed reactions to the show and its unprecedented popularity. But hey, there's no such thing as bad publicity, and by the summer of 2011, My Little Pony, its new show, and the brony fanbase were inescapable online. But amidst this wave of popularity, Lauren Faust left the show halfway through the second season's production. Some speculate it was due to the corporate nature of the show turning her off, but it's far more simple. Creating a show, then running it for years is hard. The show was too big to fail or stop in its tracks, so series writer Megan McCarthy took over as the main force for season 3 and the next few ahead. While the show remained popular, after most of the hype died down, it didn't quite feel the same. Faust's departure was a small blow at first, but it had long-term ramifications for how Friendship is Magic evolved. I'm in the camp that believes the writing quality did decline over time, but spoiler alert, not within the first 4 seasons. But speaking of which, spoiler warning, this show has an ongoing narrative, so if you want to check it out and see what the fuss is about, do that first before coming back here. This will be my take on what I like about the show's first 4 seasons, which aired on the Hub, are less than 100 episodes, and are defined by more than a few things.
Once upon a time.
Her first thing in her first show is a chick narrator. That's funny. Season 1 to 4 of the show center around a young adult unicorn prodigy, Twilight Sparkle. She knows all she can about magic and its history, but her mentor, Princess Celestia, moves her from the bustling city Canterlot to the more quaint town Ponyville to learn about the magic of friendship. There, she meets 5 other ponies, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie, and she's quickly able to bond with them, so much so that they become the new wielders of the elements of harmony. Magical friendship lasers. I'm sorry, but the big prophetic moments in this show come off to me as a little too in-your-face epic. But the weeks and months go on, and this ultra-friendly pony sextet grows more powerful, ridding the evil from Princess Celestia's estranged sister, recapturing a being of pure chaos, then re-releasing it, and saving Twilight's brother's wedding from a swarm of cloning monsters. These few adventure episodes were big events at the time they aired, but I find myself far more drawn to the episodes in between, where the actual character growth occurs. Friendship may be magic, but real-life online smash, not so much. Eventually, Twilight learns so much about the magic of friendship that she's able to reverse a dangerous spell related to both she cast on her friends, and Celestia is so proud of how much she's changed that she becomes a new Alicorn princess and gets wings. This was a controversial change at the time, but I didn't mind it at first. I personally believe it was because being a bookish shut-in, it was easy to mistake Twilight for being a teenager. The wings and longer neck say, "Don't worry, I'm legal." I still prefer the design for her as a unicorn, but what can you do? But after her coronation, more pressing changes happen, namely her friends needing to give up their elements and find keys for a magic box that appears in the forest. It turns out the keys are the other friends that they've made along the way, duh. And when Equestria is threatened by Terek, a giant centaur with a lust for pony magic, Twilight and her friends unleash a new rainbow power that saves the day and all, and Twilight officially becomes the first ever princess of friendship. Twilight's Kingdom is a really weird, melodramatic episode, but it's well made at least. That's how my feelings towards the ongoing story boil down to. It's cheesy in how overly serious it can try to be, but in these early seasons, at least it's not the focus. No, the bulk of the show is just watching Twilight and her friends work out their differences and learn more about themselves and their other friends. These are where the most interesting stories are told and the funniest jokes are made. It's a lot more fun than it should be to put on a 22-minute episode and get lost in the story and characters. The world of Equestria is vibrant and fun. Anything can happen. You can understand the character's struggles to be nice or smart. Whether it be Fluttershy's struggles to make her voice heard, Spike trying to fit into the girls' club in a useful manner, or the Cutie Mark Crusaders and their endless quest to get cutie marks, which are basically pony CVs, you're bound to find some pony to love. And that's a great thing to say about a female-led cast. I've been critical of female cartoon characters on occasion, but only because these ponies set a very high precedent. The main character, Twilight Sparkle, is an intelligent and down-to-earth unicorn, but has an obsessive streak to her. She likes every spell and every errand to be perfectly handled, but the first rule of having friends and a social life is that nothing's perfect. Almost every major event revolves around her in some way, and sure, some more spotlight time for her friends would be great, but remember in these episodes that she's the main character and the rest are very privileged secondary characters, and you're golden. That includes Pinkie Pie, my favourite character of not just the show, but probably of the whole 2010s. Bearing the element of laughter, she's a joke machine and party animal, always giving you something new to laugh at. But that doesn't mean Pinkie has no personality. She's very chipper and excitable, often annoying her friends with spontaneous ramblings about food or pure nonsense. She can get very sad if provoked or hurt, but still, everything about Pinkie Pie is consistently adorable, endearing entertainment. The only problem I can see people having with her is that when she is being over the top annoying, but in those cases it rarely affects the plot. There's also Applejack, who isn't my favourite by a long shot, but I most empathise with her. She's a strong, reliable farmer and family woman who's always eager to get dirty. She bears the element of honesty, a very basic duty of not lying, but her flaws come from things like pride and overprotectiveness. Hey, at least that means when she learns her lesson, she really learns it.
I wanted to share my thoughts with you. Ahem. I didn't learn anything. I was right all along.
Most of the time. Rainbow Dash is a cocky tomboy Pegasus, obsessed with speed and agility, hoping to one day make it into the Wonderbolts, a team of superflyers. Due to her bearing the element of loyalty and not being very loyal, she's got more detractors than the other main characters. But I think it's really fun seeing her learn there's more to life than what she desires. If Hasbro's advertising the series to 10-year-olds, let them have a surrogate. And then there's Rarity, a unicorn fashionista, and the element of generosity, always doing her best to be ladylike. She's my least favourite of the main 6 ponies because it took a very long time for her to become consistently likeable. First impressions mean a lot, and no matter how good her episodes got, she was never fully reliable as someone you wanted to know more about until towards the middle of the second season. I still like her and find her dramatic freakouts entertaining, but I struggle to find the same hook in her that others do. Rounding out this harmony is the element of kindness Fluttershy, a timid, introverted Pegasus who's afraid of anything the situation calls for. That is, except for her closest friends and the vast array of animals she takes care of. More fans latched onto her than any other character, and that's because of her purpose, to show you that you can still need to deal with social anxiety and self-esteem issues well into your adulthood. And people do, especially millennials. By having a cute, charming cartoon pony go through these ordeals and always come out on top, that builds confidence in your audience. She may only be my second favorite character, but I find her to be the most important character in the show, and the reason it took off. And that's essentially the main oh hey Spike. Spike the Dragon is Twilight's assistant, but essentially her younger brother. For anyone who felt left out at their older sister's slumber party, Spike is a manifestation of that feeling, including the crush on Rarity. I was 9 years old, about his age when the show started, and I'm 18 now, so it's like I'm watching myself grow up again. It's horrible. But in all seriousness, he's a good, unique character. You've also got the Cutie Mark Crusaders, consisting of Apple Bloom, Applejack's younger sister, Sweetie Belle, Rarity's younger sister, and Scootaloo, a homeless cripple. You can't rush growing up, and watching the Crusaders get covered in tree sap for the 100th time should rub that fact in. They're fine for breather episodes, but not a bona fide reason to watch the show. That just leaves more powerful beings to talk about, like Princess Celestia, the ruler of the land who mostly just sits back and lets Twilight save the day. But I'll be nice on her, she's my mum after all. Princess Luna, her sister, has spent 1,000 years on the moon and finds it hard to relate to modern ponies, so she just spends her time going through their dreams and solving their problems that way. I really wish they told more stories about the royal sisters, but instead we get Discord, a being of pure chaos that can change anything at will, but has to be tamed by the main six. I wish I could like him, since he's a cool idea, but he's just a douchebag that doesn't need to be a good guy. There's still dozens of ponies to discuss, so before moving on, I'll have to conduct a lightning round for the supporting cast. Alright addition, but I wish she was more useful. Sure, why not? They're sweet, but that's about it. A little outdated all things said and done, but her rhymes are always great and fun. Why turn him into a joke? Why make the grandma so funny and interesting? Jerk, and Jerk's best friend. Used just enough to be a fair addition. Good teacher, good horse, would totally brush her mane. Meh, they're fine once in a blue moon. They're basically the same character, and not very good ones. Irritating little twit that thankfully always gets what's coming to him. Pretty thin character on the show, you're better off with the fan stuff. Good foils to Applejack, could push to be more villainous. Great action hero, enough said. Decent coach for Rainbow, a more consistent personality would have made her great. Alright, I guess, shame he isn't given the best stuff to do. Ugh, I feel sorry for Mr. Harshwinny. What is this monster? It's not a pony, not little, I'm not claiming it. Didn't leave much of an impact on me, pretty generic personality. Dang is he ominous, but that's about it. Look, a villain with personality. It was actually uncanny at that point. Nice for cute background appearances, didn't need a voice, didn't need controversy. Same as with Derpy, but without those drawbacks, so the perfect horse. Yeah, the supporting cast is a mixed bag, but it's the main cast that gets the focus in every single story, and they earn it because the writing in the early seasons is timeless.
Will you look at that?
The sky's the limit to what you can bring to Equestria. There's a lot of different places to go and creatures to meet, so story setups are always interesting. It could be a trek into the Everfree Forest, a dark, mysterious place known for having untamed magic, or a detour back to Canterlot where the hustle and bustle of pony society is the main hurdle at hand. But a lot of interesting events happen in Ponyville too, because these ladies just cause lots of mayhem. Usually for good reason, usually. They all either lead pretty large lives or have big aspirations, so it's no surprise their mischief can result in a town-wide buzz, which I honestly think could have been a more interesting angle to take the show in, have them develop a divisive reputation in Ponyville over the years, but I digress. In spite of this, they all stay very close friends, through all the hardships they face as adventurers and associates. Twilight's circle of friends is impossible to break up, no matter how much they fight and argue. And yes, they do fight and argue quite a lot. Sometimes to the detriment of an episode's entertainment value, other times to its benefit. It usually depends on how well the moral is laid out. Every episode is either loosely built on realistic experiences or classical fables. so you can count on the characters learning a thing or two about responsibility or trust, etc. In nearly all the older episodes, the lesson is spelled out by Twilight or one of her friends as they write lessons to Princess Celestia, then later on in a friendship journal, just in case the younger viewers don't catch it. I appreciate this neat little bow that readily ties up every story, and am disappointed the moral standard was phased out over time. Granted, not everyone's going to agree with every moral, personal experiences are personal experiences. I still think that the way they're presented has a lot of thought put into them, to the point that you don't really need to think about them. You're just watching an entertaining story with likable characters, and that's all you need for a kids show. You may also need some songs to lighten the mood, and this show has many. They're typically presented as a way to show what a character wants, whether it be a cool new pet to bake cupcakes efficiently, or escape from a deadly cave. This is the best one. The lyrics, like the more epic plots, tend to be corny sometimes, but there is always an effort in making them catchy. And say hello again to early 2010s pop music without the dubstep and booze. Instrumentally, they aren't the most raw, authentic sounding songs ever, but I never dread when they come on. They're harmless fluff at worst and emotional impacts at best. Friendship is Magic was animated in Adobe Flash to make the art and movements smoother than your typical hand-drawn show. It's technically animated on computers, but there's still a lot of drawings going into the process. But enough about the technology, it's 10 years old anyway. Watching the show is very easy on the eyes. All the designs for characters, objects and locales are cute, but have a personality to them. And it does this while staying very simple, and I mean very simple when it comes to Season 1. The character animation gets bouncier over time, I like that, but the backgrounds get overly detailed. It isn't distracting when you're watching a Season 4 onward episode at face value, but it shows how much of the show's initial charm lay in its simplicity. But with that said, how do the first 4 seasons really compare to one another? Season 1 tends to get a lot of praise for getting bronies together in the first place, and it certainly earns that. It's sweet and innocent, but perhaps a little too sugary for a newcomer. Season 2 improves on practically everything, the animation, the comedy, and the tone to make it more accessible to all audiences. Plus its stories are more memorable for good reasons than in other years. If Season 2 came to mind, every episode in it would. It's got that much staying power and is that great at being a modern My Little Pony. But with Season 3, the show is cut down from 26 episodes to 13, and while still okay, they had a lot of good ideas that they simply didn't use well enough. A key example would be the Sombra mirror in the Crystal Empire, which shows you your worst fear, like an evil version of the Mirror of Erised from Harry Potter. It's only used in one scene, it's never brought up again. The third season is basically that underwhelming aura spread across 13 episodes. But Season 4 fixed that growing issue by having more tightly written plot lines and attempts at foreshadowing. Some episodes get overly wordy as a result, but it does a believable job of tying up Twilight's arc of becoming a friendship guru and finishing her quest to be— oh damn it. It's downhill from here on out, but this video isn't about My Little Pony's decline, it's about why it was great. And what better way to celebrate that than by listing my favourite episodes from its golden age. Let's kick off with Dragonshy, one of the first to keep you hooked from start to finish. It's a journey up a mountain to deal with a bothersome dragon, don't worry, no vor this time, with Fluttershy being the only one who can do anything about it. It's a shame she can't muster up the strength to help for most of it. Winter Wrap-Up is a quintessential Season 1 episode of any show, with Twilight struggling to fit into Ponyville's ritual of cleaning up on the day before spring. Along with that, you've got all her friends fitting in just fine, but still giving her opportunities to help, and a cute, energetic song about getting things done. Not long after, or before, came Fall Weather Friends, about Applejack and Rainbow Dash letting competition get to their heads. It's a perfect issue for the two most hot-blooded characters to sort out, and the running of the Leaves marathon's a memorable set piece. Green Isn't Your Color is about a miscommunication between Rarity and Fluttershy when the latter becomes a modeling star. It could be a problem that's solved in 2 seconds, but Pinkie forcing Twilight to keep her mouth shut adds some extra hilarious tension to the story. But if you want Pinkie to be more engaging, Party of One is the episode for you. In it, she puts together that her friends are keeping secrets from her, and that shocks her into thinking they're abandoning her. So she makes some new friends. And it's glorious. The best night ever is the end of a season-long arc about preparing for the Grand Galloping Gala, and it's a disaster. A funny one, don't get me wrong. But it serves as an excellent showcase for how each of Twilight's friends struggle in the higher class. The song is one of the show's best, and the moral of how bad experiences are going to become entertaining stories in hindsight is very mature. But how does Twilight deal with insanity? Look no further than Lesson 0, where she's so obsessed with finding a friendship problem to solve that she becomes an enemy. That description doesn't paint her in the most sympathetic light, but it's a comedy-driven episode, and also the show's darkest. With Sisterhood Social, I started to care a little more about the Cutie Mark Crusaders, when Rarity and Sweetie Belle start getting into sisterly arguments and their relationship is put on the line. I could care about Sweetie's desire to have a family that's always welcoming her. And hallelujah, I could care about Rarity begging for a second chance. The last roundup, controversial use of Derpy aside, is a fantastic episode. Applejack goes missing after a rodeo, so her friends have to track her down, but find that she's hiding something. The loopholes she finds in trying not to directly lie about it, while still staying stubborn and keeping her friends in the dark, is an excellent conflict that always drives the episode forward. Read It and Weep, or as I like to call it, Don't Sneak Into a Hospital, you asshole, sees Rainbow Dash stuck in a hospital bed with nothing to do except read a novel about the adventures of Daring Do. She becomes a fan of it overnight, but has to hide it from her friends so she doesn't seem dorky. I can see what they were doing. Hearts and Hooves Day is the breather episode to end all breather episodes, with the Crusaders wanting their teacher, Cheerilee, to get hooked up with a boyfriend because they find it cute. Only for this to backfire when they drug her and Big Macintosh with a love potion and they can't stop flirting and making goo-goo eyes at each other. It's really stupid and icky, but really funny if you've got the stomach for it. Next is It's About Time, or My Little Pony written by Stephen Moffat.
What's he doing?
Twilight gets a vague message from her future self to be afraid of some big event, and it's a high-octane, action-packed, self-fulfilling prophecy that's fun to see unfold on multiple watches. Hurricane Fluttershy shows us how strong she is in two ways. Firstly, her physical strength improving tenfold over the course of the episode. Then there's her emotional strength, where although she spends most of the runtime feeling sad and underpowered, she proves to be confident and persevere through a tough flight formation to the end. You feel every ounce of pressure she goes through, but are rewarded significantly for doing so. Too Many Pinkie Pies is another intense offering, intensely funny. When Pinkie tries to clone herself so she can spend more time with her friends, the clones stray out of her control and wreak havoc across Ponyville. Having a swarm of mindless Pinkies jumping and playing is strange enough, but then they have to be tamed and zapped back to where they came from, which is a sequence too bizarre not to find amusing. Then Sleepless in Ponyville is about Scootaloo wanting to be seen as cool by Rainbow Dash on a camping trip, but she gets freaked out by Dash's scary stories. It's cute seeing her try and fail to stay straight about it, and as far as the message of let people know when you're scared goes, they did a bang-up job. Season 4 gives us Rarity Takes Manhattan, a more modern locale than you're used to, but equally engaging. The nasty dog-eat-dog nature of the city gets to Rarity in all sorts of ways, but by the end, you can tell she's more accepting of her friends' feelings. Pinkie Pride's another Pinkie-themed gem, with her going up against another expert party planner, Cheese Sandwich, for Rainbow Dash's birth-anniversary. This one's always throwing new things at you, but it doesn't forget to have a heart, going deep into why these party ponies do what they do for others. Then we get For Whom the Sweetie Belle Toils, where Sweetie sabotages Rarity's work for a client for very childish reasons, then has a nightmare about it in how I like to label a lot of Season 4's more intense moments. Dark enough. It's not morbid or in-your-face edgy, but it's still freaky to see. My favourite episode is Testing 1 2 3, and I would love to gush about it again, but I already made a video on it, so watch that one to catch yourself up to speed. Last of all the big highlights is Inspiration Manifestation, which again fits into that dark enough zone. Spike gives Rarity a possessed book to read, and anything she can think up becomes real. The more you look into the implications, the creepier the episode gets, but it's still G-rated on the surface level, and it's great to see Spike finally telling Rarity what to do. There are a lot of good episodes to choose from, but there's also a heap of bad ones, because this show isn't immune from botched stories. Kicking off with Boastbusters, Trixie's debut. She's an interesting foil to Twilight, loving to brag about a bunch of fake accomplishments, but we spend way more time on Snips and Snails, and that's just disappointing. The Showstoppers was rather mediocre all around. The first half is just a montage of the Crusaders failing to get their cutie marks, which is skippable, and the second is them putting together a school play that's bound to end in disaster. It could have been more tightly plotted because I didn't feel a natural flow with it. A Bird in the Hoof is terribly annoying. Fluttershy has to take care of, or just outright takes, Celestia's dying phoenix to take care of it, and the rest is just bizarre character motivations, like Twilight actively trying to further frighten Fluttershy, and a predictable twist that Philomena's going to regenerate in the end. There you go, you don't need to watch it, don't thank me. Not a fan of All's Well That Ends Well either. Another bird episode. Spike getting jealous of it is fine, perhaps a little too justified, because Aloysius, Twilight's new assistant, isn't interesting at all. She just appears one day, doesn't show any traits other than helping Twilight, and we're supposed to be content with that. This will not be a popular opinion, but I don't enjoy Half Swarming Eve. It's a stage production about the origins of Pony Christmas, and to work, half the cast is turned into jerks that make the evil clouds grow until they nearly destroy the land. That wouldn't be annoying by itself, but after the happy carols, all the main six descending into an argument is salt in the wound. The worst episode of the first 4 seasons has to be Ponyville Confidential. Diamond Tiara becomes the new head of the elementary school's newspaper and forces the Crusaders to turn it into gossip that somehow everyone in Ponyville subscribes to. The worst part about it is that Twilight and her friends turn into massive hypocrites when they like the paper at first, but then turn on it when each of them are featured, and the Crusaders who didn't want to spread gossip in the first place. Throw in the plot being resolved because of a very dumb reason, and you've got something that's really sad to sit through. Dragon Quest isn't much better, the one where Spike meets up with teenage dragons and tries and fails to fit into their more angsty, destructive culture. And the point is, to show that Spike isn't welcome anywhere but Ponykind? That's nice. One Bad Apple's another one where the Crusaders are bullied, this time by Apple Bloom's cousin, who picks on them to be cool with Diamond Tiara. You know, despite her mocking blank flanks and he's a blank flank, what is this? It doesn't help that the Crusaders actively avoid telling any pony older about the bully problem, which isn't always the solution, but it's always the first step to fixing the problem. Spike at Your Service is far worse than other Spike episodes for the fact that he's nothing but an idiot. He decides one day to become Applejack's servant after she saves his life, partly because of a dragon code that's never brought up again, and partly because Twilight's too busy reading to get off her butt and do anything about it. Keep Calm and Flutter On is the one where Discord's made into a good guy, in quotes. You simply can't rely on such a rude character to carry a story, let alone one about redemption, and I had a lot of trouble telling when he turned a new leaf, if at all. Then Just for Sidekicks was merely dull, the routines it shoves in are annoying, and the main six not being able to notice Spike, the Crusaders, and 6 pets under their seats on a train full-on breaks my suspension of disbelief at the very end. With Rainbow Falls, I honestly can't remember anything about the story. It was just a lot of yelling, and he was there, and she was there, and they were there, and the Wonderbolts were garbage. It causes a strain for me to think back on this one. In Three's a Crowd, Discord's once again a jackass I can see right through. We could have had Twilight and Cadence hanging out and dealing with some issue by themselves, but instead Discord fakes being sick for attention. The conflict's annoying and unearned. Philly Vanilli's a pretty average Fluttershy episode with a song that's played 1 or 6 too many times. You also have Pinkie Pie actively upsetting Fluttershy, which is a terrible use of her, but nothing to get mad at writer Amy Keating-Rogers or voice actress Andrea Lippin about. Benefit of the doubt, Andrea did a great job sounding like a pain in the neck.
Pinkie Pie! Don't be ridiculous! Aw, but I'm so good at it!
Rounding out the duds is Somepony to Watch Over Me, where Applejack leaves Apple Bloom alone for a couple minutes, then goes into complete overprotective mayhem against her wishes. That's annoyingly out of character when you consider her free spirit and active lifestyle, and then Apple Bloom goes into the forest to prove her worth, and great, I can't relate to her either. No matter what episode of this show you're talking about, or what aspect you're picking apart to find further merit in, there's no denying that this generation of My Little Pony started out good. I personally hopped onto the ride after these seasons, but I still liked the show, then loved it, then became dangerously addicted to it for dopamine, then withdrew from it to repair my mental health, and now give it a firm but modest look at it for what it is. A high-quality kids show with a ton of imagination and likability. I enjoyed these characters, the jokes, the morals, wasn't too keen on the lore, but that's got massive appeal to certain people, I know. If I were to recommend the show to you based on that aspect, I'd say start from season 1 and check out all the premieres and finales before settling into the more standard episodes. And if you're more into episodic, lighthearted fare, I'd say do the exact opposite. Check out episodes from the first 3 seasons that you think will interest you and gradually sink into what characters you like and what stories you get the most out of. Season 1 to 4 of Friendship is Magic and much of 5 are going to be classic animation in no time, I just know it. But what don't I like about the later seasons? Well, I don't want to bring this video down, so that discussion I'll save for another time. I'm happy with ponies, and that's all I could ask for. Goodbye for now.